Hey everyone, and welcome to another Hungover podcast. It's me, Yvonne, and over there...
we've got Julien. Welcome to the podcast.
Cool, and what we're talking about today is an incredibly important topic, very prescient. It's about education.
Yes.
And so if you want to continue hearing us talk about all these interesting topics that we get around to, from education to Overwatch week last week, you always have to try and check us out. Always have to try. Cool. On all the different platforms that we have. So we're on iTunes, SoundCloud, and on YouTube.
Yes. And also, Yvonne, did you know that if you guys really like this podcast, or if you have something to say, a bone to pick with us, go ahead and please leave an iTunes review for us. That would really help with our visibility in the vast world of the internet, and we'd really appreciate it.
Cheers to you guys.
Cheers. Now, Yvonne, we begin our podcast every week by asking each other what media have you been consuming, whether it be music, videos on the internet, or movies, etc., or video games. And what did you drink last night?
So, I had a delicious Carlsberg, and I'm continuing with some summer shandy today.
Nice.
But this week was a tough week for me because I moved.
Oh man, moving around in the city of Syracuse.
Yeah, so it was a lot of
New York.
packing and such, so I listened to a bunch of music, but none of it was particularly new. I have my I Love the 90s playlist, but I also finished listening to the Audible of Jurassic Park the book.
I thought
book.
you were actually reading it. I mean, not that
No.
it actually doesn't make a difference, but
I don't think it makes that big of a difference.
it doesn't. It really doesn't. And also, you can now consume a book while doing other things.
Right.
It's really cool.
Yeah, so that was me. How about you,
Audiobooks,
Julien?
FTW. Yeah, I guess we're recording this on Monday, which we usually don't. But so last night, let's see. I've consumed basically very little media. I wanted to talk about... spoiler alert, this maybe... I gotta think about that. But we're going to be playing Dark Souls, or maybe we already have by the time you're listening to this. Dark Souls 3, we're continuing our Dark Souls Let's Play. Drunk Souls the Third, Part 2 should be coming out at some point. And basically, you watched me try to fight a boss in that game for 2 hours, and I completely failed. That was a hell of a lot of fun. Thanks a lot, Dark Souls, you fucking jackass. Oh, come on. That game is so frustrating. And I cannot wait to beat that fucking boss, Yvonne.
I can't wait for you to beat that boss.
That's the thing about it. Which is why we gotta record a great podcast tonight. Then I gotta edit something, and then I gotta go grind out in that fucking game. I'm not sleeping until I play that game tonight. But even though it's kind of late right now.
Sleep till the boss is dead.
I will not beat it without recording it. But
hopefully
I will
recording it with me, but okay.
For those who don't know, Dark Souls is probably the most difficult game franchise out right now in 2017. Dark Souls 3 is the game we're playing through. Go ahead and check us out on YouTube if you want to see us get really frustrated.
Yeah, I'm not touching that game series with a 50-foot pole.
Yeah,
it's definitely the most difficult modern game series.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Because old game series, you didn't even get a save point.
Oh yeah, you had, and if you were lucky, you got to type in an incredibly long password to access your save. Holy crap! I remember. Well, yeah, I know. I mean, I wasn't. I didn't have a game console until I got the GameCube, so we did have. I had saves. Oh shit! Check that out. Revelations right there, my friend. Actually, no, I had a PlayStation. That's a lie.
Nah, go fuck yourself.
Go fuck yourself.
Rich kid.
Yeah, well, sorry, my aunt and uncle from Hong Kong wanted to spoil me. Yeah, it's just how it is. I'm not going to lie about that. Also, I had a Game Boy, which I love.
Oh, I had a Game Boy, too. I just didn't count that.
Yeah, well, fine, fair enough.
I got a Game Boy Color off of eBay.
Nice. That is a relic, man. Game Boy Color had a lot of good games on it.
I had a
So
Game
did the
Boy Color and a Game Boy Pocket Silver Edition,
Dope. I
which had the
green...
cool commercial for it with the kid in the cave, and it's all snowy, and he's got the silver puffy jacket on.
Do you still have it?
Somewhere, yeah. I think it's in Buffalo.
Did you lose the what's it called? The
back cover
to the cover for the batteries?
If I did, it was only in the past like 4 years. I had it
Holy
until
crap.
very recently.
Yeah, kids these days, you don't know. Oh, Nikki has brought me a Game Boy Color with Donkey Kong Land 2 in it.
Nice.
Check that out. If you want to go see a piece of history here, you got to go watch the YouTube video of this podcast. We will be showing off retro things like this. Totally, all night.
We're always about retro gaming.
But yeah, I think everyone lost... All of my friends, anyways, lost the cover to the battery because kids don't know how good it is these days with your rechargeable lithium-ion batteries and such. We had AA batteries, and when that shit ran out, you couldn't play anymore. God damn.
Unless you recharged those batteries.
Well, eventually, yeah, they made rechargeable AA batteries, but those never worked as well. They never lasted as long. But then again, you could recharge them. But yeah, I had a green Game Boy Pocket. We can delve into this. Maybe we should talk about this instead. But
I had a clear purple one.
Oh, cool.
No, that was my Game Boy Color. Yeah.
Yeah. That
Anyway.
I drank Ithaca Brewing Company Flower Power IPA. That is a very bitter beer, but also very floral at the same time. It's very nice.
Yeah, I find that the Flower Power is the most floral IPA I've had. In terms of like that finish is very colorful.
It's nice, just like the label of the beer. Oh my god.
We're super together for this podcast.
Hey. It's going to be a good podcast, guys. We got a lot to talk about. But before that, I wanted to tell a story. My friend Breton, who he's an artist, he had a really cool sort of thing he's been working on. It was a show. He was basically doing like a late night type show, talk show. Mm-hmm. If you will, and he invited us all over to do it, and I was one of the acts at the show. It was actually a lot of fun. Nice. He needed me to do a 5-minute chemistry act in the show.
Cool.
So and it was really interesting. I liked the whole aesthetic. To start off, he talked about the history of shrimp cocktail, and I learned a lot actually. New York City, before the rise of Battery Park and landfill in Manhattan, was actually a huge the coastline of Manhattan was a great breeding place for oysters, apparently. And they once grew oysters like the size of a dinner plate, and it's amazing. Holy crap. Imagine eating that. How could you even eat that?
It'd be a very long slurp.
That would be so slimy but delicious at the same time. Also,
like
maybe deep fry it. I feel like you have to deep fry oyster the size of a dinner plate. But anyways, I did a reaction called the Briggs-Rosher reaction. It's a pretty cool reaction, Yvonne. It oscillates between 3 different colors. Colorless, I guess that's not a color, but colorless, an amber color, and then a dark blue color. And
I've done this experiment before with my mother. This?
Yeah, it's I might have given them all cancer because they may or may not have breathed in some iodine gas, but that's all right. I covered it, Yvonne, with parafilm. Jesus. All right, that was a joke. I didn't kill them all. They're still alive. Maybe
Allegedly.
Not in 30 years. We'll find out. But yeah, it's a really cool reaction because it oscillates between those 3 colors, and it does that for about 5 minutes or something. And I impressed a bunch of artists. With science?
I mean,
and they were into it. And then I decomposed some H2O2 into oxygen gas and water, and I captured it with soap. So I made a lot of foam. Yeah, so you can catalyze the reaction with potassium iodide. H2O2 would otherwise, and this sort of ties into our topic, but I'll let me explain that H2O2 decomposes on itself by itself if you just leave it. H2O2 is obviously hydrogen peroxide. You use that to clean your cuts, but it's normally a 3% solution. So and then the rest is water. So I had a 20% solution, and I catalyzed it with potassium iodide, which makes the reaction go a lot faster. And because it's going so much faster, and it's an exothermic reaction, it's going to create a lot more heat than you would normally see. And so and then you put dish soap in the reaction, and you can do this at home with yeast. Actually, it's fun because it's just soap. It's no one's gonna get hurt. But you can do it with yeast. It's not as violent of a reaction, but it should please the kids if you're into it. And so it basically, it's like a volcano coming out, but it's just soap out of the flask, and then a little bit of hot oxygen gas comes off as well, and it sort of like spurts out. If you put your hand over it, you can feel how hot it is, which is the beauty of science, I thought. It's really interesting. You're breaking bonds, and that energy is given off as heat, and that's really cool to be able to see that and feel it even. I wouldn't touch the flask while it's going on, though. It gets a little hot. But yeah, so that sort of leads into, unless you have any more to say, Yvonne, about...
No, I think that example of how science works could be taught to anyone, from people who are artists in their adult life to kids in schools as a science demonstration.
Right, and in fact, sorry, I just had to write down the timestamp. In fact, that leads us into the topic of the show, which is us talking about the American educational system, because that's primarily that's definitely where I got educated in. Yvonne, you weren't in school in Russia, in the Soviet Union at all, right?
Neither the Soviet Union nor Russia.
Okay, just checking. So yeah, you grew up in America.
I did
mostly.
go to private school for 1 year. It was a Catholic school.
How was that?
And it was for pre-K.
Oh, so you don't... Well, you could...
I remember it, but I don't remember exactly anything about
That's
it.
That's funny, you in a schoolboy outfit. That's pretty funny. A little schoolboy outfit. But yeah, I think it's sort of a touchy topic, the educational system in America. Many people, including the politicians who are no longer in it, have many, many different opinions on how our children should be educated. Of course, a lot of our politicians did in fact go to Harvard and Yale and such, and very good collegiate schools. But we're primarily going to focus on before high school, so K through 12, I believe, unless you want to talk about colleges in America, which are all great.
I mean,
really great colleges.
There's a lot of interference by politicians in university education as well.
Yeah, but
my mom
figured...
was just telling me about a ridiculous thing.
Oh, well, tell me.
So...
and you should preface, your mom is a professor at...
she's at a Ohio State school.
Yeah.
And maybe in the edit bleep where that little thing came in.
Okay.
But anyway, she's at an Ohio State... My mom is at an Ohio State school, and she teaches chemistry, biochemistry, and an assortment of different courses in chemistry. And the thing is that all of the professors in Ohio now have to sign a declaration that they are not financially beholden to publishers of books of any kind, and to pay out of their own pockets $35 for the verification of that financial check.
Wait, so they... I'm sorry, I'm missing...
The idea behind this whole thing is that professors are assigning very expensive textbooks to students.
Yes.
And the reason that they're
because they're
assigning
getting
these
paid
textbooks is because the
publishers.
professors are in the pockets of the publishers. So rather than go after the publishers themselves, they're going after the professors and making professors who at state schools are paid state-sponsored salaries $35 out of their own pocket to verify that they are not financially beholden, rather than going after the people who generate the gouging prices of these textbooks, like publishers themselves.
Maybe I should ask some professors at my school about that. That sounds interesting.
That's an Ohio thing.
Ohio. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
So it's politicians' hands in the buckets of education does not stop at the local level.
Right.
What's interesting, though, about education in general in the United States is how localized it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because
how the education across, New York City is probably a very specific case, but just the education across the state of New York, let's say, or any state in general, is going to vary county by county even. You could be across the street at a different school, and you could be getting a worse or better education than the kid that your best friend across the street, who's going to a different school. And that's how ridiculous our standardization of education has sort of fallen apart in this country, I think, probably in the past 50 years, really. I would say it goes back to there, but I don't have any benchmark years in education to talk about, I guess.
It's interesting because if you say 50 years, it puts it approximately to Brown v. Board. Brown v. Board was 1955.
Got him. I knew that. All right.
1954, 1955.
Yeah, right.
Education is also a place that just tons of money gets poured into education promises and nonprofits and charter schools nowadays. It's just such a diverse field to get into.
Yeah. So, what for the viewer who may not know, or maybe you're not from America, what is a charter school, and what is the difference in America between a private school and a public school, Von?
Excellent. Okay, so in America, there are essentially a few different levels of schools. So public school is the standard state-sponsored school that has had the same form since a German immigrant initiated the kind of K through 12 system that we have in modern schools. Yeah, right. So actually, he might not have been a German immigrant, but he took the formulation from Germany, and that he implemented it in Massachusetts, and then it grew from there. So public school is K through 12, although pre-K has been initiated across the country as well, often as a jumpstart program for children in families where English is the second language or English is a new language. Mm-hmm. Often those are like free pre-K, state-sponsored or city-sponsored pre-K will be for those types of families. But essentially, it is just you are chosen where you go to basically based on your zip code, and there's school districting, and there's a lot based on, like the funding of all schools are based on where your school is zoned and property taxes in that area. So let's say you have been, this also ties into how the United States sponsored segregated housing. So segregated housing leads to lower property taxes in designated bad neighborhoods where, for instance, the government sanctioned black people to be put into what's called red line districts. So they could only live in those areas of a city like Los Angeles or Chicago. And you could look at demographic maps of these huge urban centers where the concentrations of black people are centered there. That's because of the legacy of national-sponsored segregation that was implemented within these city limits. And so then you have smaller property taxes, less education, harder job finding, etc. So support systems at home are more difficult, etc. But the funding for the school comes from the property, and that's why a lot of public schools seem to be underfunded. Now, the alternative to a public school used to be just a private school. So a private school, generally, it used to be something that was a religious association. So because of the separation between church and state, in state-sponsored schools, the usual public schools, religious training was not part of the schooling. But if you had a certain denomination, you were Jewish or Catholic or Muslim, you wanted to send your child to have a specific type of education, like a Jesuit school for many Catholics, then you send them to a private school. That used to be the case, but there are also very high standard preparatory schools, like Exeter, or off the top of my head, is one of the most prestigious private schools that is kind of a prep school for those Harvards and Yales and Princetons.
Right, absolutely. And if you're not, and a lot of colleges will definitely accept you based on legacy of people of your parents going to college, or your grandparents going to the college, and then how much money they donated to the college, of course.
Exactly. And the same thing will happen for those private schools.
Yeah, so
which is really interesting.
We're sort of hiding our
then there was the difference between a public school and a private school, right? So private schools used to be generally based on religious training, or for the wealthy elite, like those Andover, Exeter, those kinds of academies. There were also boarding schools, which tend to be private, and then because of the failure of many public schools, and because, as you mentioned, in 1955, desegregation was started to be enforced across the country.
Yeah.
From that time of desegregation to the modern school system, we see a huge rise of chartered schools. So chartered schools are they generally are schools that are given special grants by the city or state to not be run by the state standards or the city standards, whatever the school board is. They have their own set of standards, and they can have their own requirements for teaching for children in terms of classes they have to take, etc. And there's much less supervision. But they can be privately funded, they can be publicly funded, or there can be a public-private partnership. But what we're seeing right now is that in the rise in the modern age is that these privately funded or private-public partnerships are really where you can gouge a lot of investment out of, hitting the mic from my passion, gouge a lot of return on investment from people who want to just use this as a way to gain money rather than caring for the education of students. The alternatives for for students who want a charter school can be that their parents want to go from a poor public school to a better one. There are some charter schools that provide really a lot better results in terms of graduation rates and test taking and prepping for college or post-secondary education. But a lot of charter schools are just ways to kind of rake in cash on the idea that they're better than the public schools. And that's also where you get some disassociation between, charging for charter schools and gouging students, and also the idea that students who are assigned to a certain zip code, if they can't afford to go to a private school, but their parent doesn't want them to mix and mingle with the children in their area, then they can find a charter school which might be slightly different. It might be in a different school district, etc.
I see. So you could say that some people are trying to turn education into a business in this country because of the capitalist way.
I mean, education has been turned into a business. It's just now trickling down into the K through 12 area in a much grander scale. Because we saw education become a business with the rise of private institutions in higher education and for-profit institutions. Yeah. But we didn't go to a for-profit private institution, did
No,
we?
of course.
Or did we? Maybe we
I
did.
thought we did. Doesn't the chancellor take a lot of money?
Yeah, actually,
everything?
Nancy Kanzler gave a lot of her check back to the university.
Oh, she did? Okay.
Yeah. That was
She
a
was also
previous
lifted
chancellor.
up by Shaq. That was funny.
But I think the big problem is thinking of for-profit education. It's not necessarily Syracuse University, because they actually have some of the top-rated schools in the country, and they do help with job promotion, etc.
Oh,
But
definitely.
for-profit education systems like the Trump University system,
Oh, God.
or things like that, or like ITT Tech, things like that. Those
Oh,
are purely
yeah.
profit motive. They don't give financial aid, really. They're very heavy investments for students that get into a lot of debt, and their entire goal of those kinds of institutions is just the cycle of students coming in.
So, right. Right, but let's see. Our education system is a mess, you could say, right?
I
mean,
would tend to agree with that.
There are, yeah, exactly. You agree. There are many different types of schools that you can choose to go to, or you end up getting forced to go to a specific school because of where you live and, unfortunately, where you grew up. And
Right.
your parents may not be able to get out of that situation because of their financial situation, and so you're forced into sort of, I mean, it's sort of like a cycle in these communities that are of lesser, I guess, poor communities in America, where because you were born into, unfortunately, a lower financial bracket, you're going to get less opportunities or fewer opportunities to get an education that you obviously deserve. Of course, everyone deserves a good education in this country, but I think it's
often referred to as the cycle of poverty.
Right, exactly. So then you're going to, I mean, this is just taking the average, right? Because you didn't get a very good education, you're not going to get a very good job, so you're going to end up in the same situation, which is very sad, and I don't want to see that happen ever. But I think our country, I mean, we're always compared to a lot of other countries in the world in terms of our education. And and I say we, and I'm speaking of us as Americans, we definitely fall very low in education in terms of ranking in mathematics, science, and even literacy, like you said, right?
There was I forget when the study was published. There was a study a long time ago that basically did a global, or it ranked eighth graders on eighth graders in what they classified as industrialized or developed nations, and basically, for instance, for math, Americans scored the highest in terms of confidence and the lowest or one of the lowest in terms of their actual ability. Whereas other places, like in Japan, I think that was the country that had the inverse. So they had the lowest confidence in their skills, but some of the highest ability. So it was an interesting dynamic of American bravado being reinforced from the 8th grade on.
Right, and it's really interesting that a country that is pretty much the superpower in the world has some of the worst education comparatively to other countries, of course, in the world.
That's why immigration is so important for America.
Oh yeah, definitely, because all our brightest scientists are immigrants, and they're having kids here, and hopefully they get to go to good schools as well, of course. But really, it's a funding problem on top of lack of paying teachers. Teachers are treated probably on the lowest of the low in this country, I think, on average. They definitely don't get paid the most by median salary, unless you're in Boston, apparently.
Yeah, Boston has a
right?
pretty good salary for his teachers. But I would also add that it's just that teaching is viewed as a desperate and unappealing job. A lot of the
Yeah,
times, it's the what's the old very derogatory saying is, if you can't do, teach.
yeah. If those who cannot do teach, and then if you watch School of Rock, those who cannot teach gym. But Jack Black. Sorry, but it's kind of true. No, kidding. But no, right. You're exactly. So, like you said, it's sort of, if you think about it, in society in America, it's pretty much looked down upon to just commit your life to teaching high school or something, a subject in high school, and that is the exact opposite of what it should be, because teaching is such a noble cause, I think. And I think the teachers in America are probably some of the best people in this country that this country has to offer. They care about they probably care about this country so much more than the politicians in this country, I would say, because they actually care about the future of this country, the education in the country. And I really hope that if there are any teachers out there, that that your situation gets better, or the average situation for a teacher gets better, I hope, in the coming years. But it doesn't really look like it, considering our leader is dealing with a lot of things right now.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the thing that, like, it astounds me how often, and this is not to disparage those who sort of are in the military or whatever.
Oh, military.
This is where I'm going with this. Obviously,
right, we support our troops.
Support the people who are in the military, not necessarily how the military is used.
No, that's exactly.
But it's astounding to me the amount of times that people cite the importance of those who serve in uniform and the military, and I understand that, and they have a very dangerous job they've signed up for, and they should be appreciated. But the lack of appreciation for teachers is, in my opinion, I don't see why teachers and scientists shouldn't be put on the same level as soldiers, because they're contributing to this country and this world in a way that is as, if not more, impactful in terms of what the future will bring. And I know that you're passionate about science and scientists being recognized. I'm passionate as well about that, but I'm way more focused on the educational aspect of it, having worked in Title I high school for 2 years and gaining a lot of experience in terms of teaching in that environment, as well as at the university level as a TA. I think education is my passion, and I really think that it needs to be valued, especially public education, because that is such a critical opportunity for students to have. And the evidence that we have is that charter schools and alternatives to public schools in those fashions, maybe not private schools, if they're going to the most advanced private schools, but most charter schools don't heavily outperform public schools. But there's this idea that if your kid is going to a charter school, that's way better. And the idea behind school is to take it out of the hands of the public people and put it into private hands. And the trouble with that is that when you start going down that path, then you have less regulation and less ability for people to say, like, maybe creationism shouldn't be taught as equal to actual factual science and evolution and global warming and all these issues that are very highly necessary for kids to know in the coming future, because those who don't believe in global warming are destroying the earth. But when you have
that's a different topic.
Betsy DeVos as the Secretary of Education, you have a person who has pushed for charter schools to be the option for kids across the state of Michigan and now across the country.
Right. No, I'm like you said, I'm very passionate. I care a lot about education as well, Vaughn. All right.
Yeah. No. I wasn't
kidding.
saying. I was just saying that. Yeah. Okay.
No, of course. No, I mean, you care about education across the board. Of course, I agree with you. It's 100% probably.
I mean,
I'd say the second most.
You have done as much or more education at this point with your years as a PhD student as I have. So it's not that you don't care for it. I was just comparing your love of science from my love of education.
I'm kidding. It was a. But yeah, for the preface, I am a PhD student studying chemistry. Right now I'm in my 4th year, and so I TA as well, and I'm also teaching. I on the side I teach a Regents class. So in New York we have to take a standardized test in high school. There are a bunch of different topics. I of course teach a chemistry topic to high schools that is primarily focused on arts. Actually, so the students are all artists pretty much. They're all dancers or art or visual artists or musicians. But yeah, so needless to say, they don't want to go into science, right? It's not going to happen for them. It doesn't. But that's not the problem. Is like you were saying earlier. I think a very important thing that I learned actually from. Or important stance that Neil deGrasse Tyson takes, because he's probably the most famous scientist in America right now. I'd say that everyone knows him. Stephen Hawking, Bill Nye the Science Guy, Michio Kaku. They're like the big, very social scientists that are all trying to educate the people, America through, but in a very social way. They're just trying to make science part of your everyday life, which it absolutely should be, I think.
Because it is.
Because it absolutely is. Everything around you is governed by laws of physics and things like that, and chemistry. And so his whole idea is that you don't want to yell at the politicians for saying, "Oh, global warming isn't real" or whatever, and these science facts, by the way, are not facts. Basically, they're alternative facts, right? He's trying to say if you educate the electorate, so the people electing the officials, then in science, and everyone becomes scientifically literate, then we're basically going to wipe the slate clean, and we're going to elect politicians that can represent us in a way that is scientifically literate, basically. So that's Neil deGrasse Tyson's whole stance in a nutshell, when it comes to the things that he says about. I agree with that a lot, and I think that. I wanted to ask you. I mean, obviously, it's a very complicated subject, but what do you think that? Let me see. How do I phrase this? So when you become a teacher, you're committing yourself to teaching a lot of the subject that you're teaching. But but you remember your good teachers. There are good teachers and there are bad teachers. Unfortunately, I wish every teacher could be a good teacher, but sometimes. You just don't have the patience to be a teacher. You have to be a very patient person, I think, in general. But do you think some people become teachers when they really shouldn't be? And do you think that's primarily because there's no funding for teachers, so they can't be happy being teachers, so they may not put as much effort into being a teacher as they might have once thought they would do, or I don't know. It's a
complex question.
Yeah,
and I think that it's not answerable, because I think every teacher should be more or less treated on an individual basis. Having worked with a teacher who was literally 2 years or a year away from retirement when I was working with her, she was my partner teacher. She taught 9th grade math in a Title I school, and she had been there for years. And the students didn't really connect with her because they were all young Latino kids, and she was an older white lady. And so there was just generational and semi-cultural disconnect. But the idea behind it was that she when we went into meetings to discuss students who were falling behind or needed help or were having some sort of behavioral issue as a teacher unit to help support the students, she was one of the most passionate advocates for how those students were doing. And
Absolutely.
it's those kinds of people who, even if on a day-to-day basis they might not be the happiest with the students, but when it comes down to like fighting and believing in how the students can be the full potential of what they can be, that's the kind of teacher that is great. And I'd have to say that I think that there are a lot of teachers who just they won't connect with how you learn, or they won't connect with the material and won't connect you to the material in a way that is engaging for you. For instance, there might be a great teacher for, Sally Two Shoes, whatever, but when it comes to me learning about biology, I'm not super into it. And, biology and chemistry, like at home, chemistry was literally the dinner conversation. Like, I had been taught chemistry from the time I could basically understand language. So I wasn't a huge fan of chemistry because it was just so much all the time. So it didn't matter how good my chemistry teacher was. I wasn't super connected to the material, even though I really did like my chemistry teacher as her personality was. I just didn't like the material. And I think that can often be the situation. Or the situation arises where the teacher is so used to teaching the subject in a certain way that you come to the idea of the curse of knowledge, or like the fallacy of knowledge, in which the person who's teaching knows everything about the subject, right?
Yeah.
But they're trying to translate it to somebody who knows little or nothing about the subject.
Absolutely.
And there comes a disconnect in that. So I think a lot of people will discover that they actually have a passion for teaching that have always thought, no, I couldn't handle being a teacher. I think if you're in a classroom, if you're surrounded by that kind of environment, you will quickly learn how intoxicating it is to be around young people and helping them learn how to be a better person, or learn how to just understand things in the world around them. Like, I never thought I was the kind of guy, and you can attest to this, in university, you never would have thought that I would be teaching material. I was an arrogant kind of asshole.
Oh, you know everything, don't you, Yvonne?
And I thought that if you didn't know something, then you were an idiot, essentially. A lot of that came from the style of just conversations that I was used to having and different things.
I like all your random facts that were all lies. Those were my favorite.
Yeah. But when I got to school, I learned how to be a positive influence and to force yourself into a place of positivity, and learning about different learning styles and intelligences. It's really a crucial thing, I think, at some point in everybody's life, that they should be put into the position where they have some sort of supportive environment where they are training or teaching someone, because I think it's life-changing, and people will discover quickly how beautiful it is to be put in that position. Now, if after 10 years of trying to educate students who don't care about what you're teaching them, and you can't find a way to connect to them, and you get super depressed or angry or fall into a pattern of never believing or trusting the students will want to be there for you and be in your classroom anyway, then you fall into a certain trap, which can lead to really intensely bad teaching.
No, yeah, my dad is a professor of chemistry also, oddly enough, and he always tells me he's been teaching for 40 fucking years, so he's been doing it. He's been a professor for 40 years at one college. He's an old man. Maybe we can get him on the podcast one day. If this podcast gets big enough, maybe we can get our parents on. Maybe we convince our parents to talk to each other, or maybe they can do the
All
podcast
Chemist
for us.
podcast.
Yeah,
I'll just step out.
Yeah. But yeah, so he always tells me that you don't want to burn out teaching Because we're both in grad school. We both have experience teaching as TAs, and of course you tutored math algebra, right? In a program, and I now I teach chemistry for high schools, sorta. But yeah, he always tells me he doesn't like to teach the same class over and over and over, semester after semester after semester, and so he always tries to switch. And this is why being a professor is nice. You have the liberty of switching what topic you're teaching. If you're a high school teacher or an elementary school teacher, you're teaching the same thing over year after year after year for sometimes people stay in education for 20 years in the same school, and that's great, and you really care about the community, but sometimes it can be a little like you said, you can get disconnected with the material and how you should go about teaching it. So it's really good. Luckily, my dad is a professor, so he can switch topics in chemistry, of course, so he doesn't get burned out that way. But yeah,
I think that is an advantage. And then professors can also create their own courses if they're interested in studying something, so that is an advantage. But I think that's also some of the reason that you get a lot of people who have trained to be teachers burn out of teaching within the first 5 years in public school education.
It's exhausting, right? You have, maybe the second year's, I would probably say, easier than the first year, right? You have your curriculum set up, and if you're going to teach the same subject again, you can just use your notes again and just teach it the same way you did it. But after a while, you're working odd hours, of course. Sure, school ends at 3, but you still got to do work until 5 or 6 because you're a teacher, and then you got to wake up early, you got to get to school at 7. It's crazy.
And then this teacher that was a year or two away from retiring was at school early, stayed after school late, and supported her students from day 1 to the last day of classes in terms of helping them to make up work, etc. So it's a crazy schedule, and everybody says that, I would so love to have a teaching schedule because it's only 10 months out of the year, blah, blah,
10
blah.
10 months out of the year.
It's an extraordinary amount of work day to day. And
no, I know.
And it doesn't stop there, because then you have teacher training and different things over the summers as well. So it's not so simple.
Not to mention if you're a young teacher and you're just starting up a family, holy crap, you got to take care of another kid who's not in your school. Granted, you teaching might help you teach your kid very well, certain things, of course, but and you can discipline your kid. But yeah, so it becomes a full life job, not full time, full life. It becomes your life, but of course, the reason why you start teaching is because it's the most rewarding thing in the world, I think, for humans, anyways, because humans are social beings. So it ends up being a very rewarding thing, and I believe. We've gone off on a tangent on the philosophy of teaching, of course. We wanted, because we care about teaching, but we wanted to talk about, I guess, the state of teaching in America. Do you think I was gonna say this, like maybe we can't really necessarily blame our educational system because we have 50 million or something crazy. Like, how many students do you think are in America? Around 50 million or something. There's a lot of students in America, and so it's tough to have an educational system that is standard across the board. But then you have to think about a country like China, who clearly trumps us in a lot of things, but definitely in population, to say the least. So how are they educating their kids so well? Apparently so well. I don't know, because I didn't get educated in China, and also I assume the same things apply if you are the cycle of poverty, right? I assume that applies in China as well.
I think that it might be slightly different in China just based on the different systems. So there it's more socialist, communist-ish. It's not fully any kind of representation of those ideologies in its purest form, but there is more of that. And something interesting is Thomas Friedman, who is a famous economist. He writes for the New York Times, etc. And I believe it was him who stated that 50 years ago, it was better to be a C student in America than an A student in China. But in the modern age, it might be better to be an A student in China, an A student in China than a C student in the U.S. because the education system is building. There's more opportunities. You see the amount of just at the university itself, because I'm here at Syracuse, I see the amount of demographic change that's happened between when I graduated and now. Just the sheer amount of Chinese students in particular.
Korean. I thought there were a lot of Korean students.
There are, but the amount of Chinese students that have come to Syracuse University to get education is tremendous. Like, that is the fastest growing demographic that I've seen.
Are they all in science?
A lot of them, I think,
50%.
actually are part of like Whitman and different things as well.
Oh, so, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's. I think that they're more focused on those kinds of, as one would say, like, you can take skills out of those professions. So less focused on arts and things like that, but more engineering, business, those kinds of definitive skill majors and educations.
Right. So, I mean, it's just so. It almost brings a tear to my eye when I hear politicians in this country talk about what they want to do with the educational system, right? They're trying to, a lot of politicians, primarily Republicans, are trying to cut funding for arts and music and things like that, and even physical education, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, which is
it's just that the Common Core is a lot of schools having to follow Common Core and different things. It's difficult to manage the necessities of standardized test taking in the modern education and balance that out with what are interpreted as electives like physical education and the arts programs, as well as balancing out funding for everything, because it's just such a strain on teachers and the schools that it's like, that there is the possibility of severe cuts to arts and physical education or like recess programs.
It's a mess. It's a mess. Are there any other topics you want to touch on in education? Of course, this is a very diverse topic that we couldn't possibly cover in one podcast. So if you want to hear us talk about a specific portion of education, or if you thought that this was an intriguing topic, go ahead and tell us in the comments section below or tweet at us. But Yvonne, I wanted to know if there's anything else you wanted to talk about. I think
tying into the cutting in arts and physical education. Well, physical education is important in general, just to promote nutrition, healthy lifestyles, etc. In a time when
something we need to be educated on. In America specifically.
Yeah,
obesity is an epidemic in this country. It's crazy.
It's insane that would be one of the things to be cut away. But again, the fun idea of funding and systems. So what do you want to promote? Physical education or people to buy donuts and burgers and cookies? But the other thing is...
all great, by the way.
But in moderation.
I love donuts, burgers, and cookies. But you have to eat them in moderation, kids. All right? But yeah, what are you saying? Sorry.
I think that so a lot of the way that teaching has changed because of the idea of standardized tests, bringing specific data from schooling, etc., and trying to make basically a school system or the education system so data driven that it's taking a lot of the curiosity and different things out of education. On the other side, so it's breeding a lot of curiosity out of education, I think. But on the other side, there's also this idea that rote memorization has no place in education. And one of the things that I found super useful from my own study in terms of when I played chess with a chess tutor, or when I did music education with violin or viola, is that there are elements of rote memorization, and that really helps to organize how the brain and mind works and to really reformat how memory works. Because I think for myself, I learn tons of facts and grasp onto information so intensely well because a lot of my education in my formative years was about rote memorization, and my mind had to learn how to remember facts. Like, I had to learn my times tables in second grade so that I could get Pokemon Blue. I had to memorize how to play music for violin school.
It's a good reward.
And I had to memorize how to do chess openings to do well in chess tournaments and different things. And I think that expanding those elements of my brain out into different areas of my life really have helped in terms of memorizing and knowing a lot of different things.
I think also because you are bilingual, that definitely helped when you were just early. You automatically, if you're bilingual, you just have an advantage in the way you're thinking, and everything about your life is just, you have an advantage.
Yeah,
So I think obviously, in order to promote that, we need to start teaching the kids all about the languages when they're younger.
So what you're saying is I'm the perfect human.
You are the perfect human, Yvonne.
Thank you. You heard it. You heard it from Julian's mouth first.
He does it all. He even is very good at Overwatch. But
I wish.
But no, right. Oh God, that's the one thing he's bad at. Yeah. So no, really, being bilingual helps a lot. But if obviously if your parents only speak one language, if you're exposed to languages earlier on, studies show this is going to be beneficial to you in the future. And also you get to sound badass because you speak a different language. That's pretty cool. IMHO.
Yeah, I think
all languages. I mean, English is a pretty cool language. I do like it. But that's also a different podcast. No, you're right. I agree with you. Memorization is... it sounds like a chore, maybe, if you're currently in school and under college level school. Even college, you have to memorize a lot of things. And it sounds like a chore, but it does indeed help you with your everyday life, and helps you think about things differently and learn things differently and more efficiently, most likely, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so like we said, this topic is very vast, and we definitely didn't cover it at all. We didn't cover it. We covered mostly teaching philosophy, of course, because
that's something that we both really relate to.
Yeah, no, and it's something we really care about, and it's really important that you're getting a good education out there, and I hope everyone seeks out their public library. Maybe they're not getting the best education at their school, but that doesn't mean it's all that's all you can do. You can be your own educator. I think that's primarily a good lesson to learn in college, at least. I mean, most students, even me, and I assume you, learn, all right, what do I have to do? Okay, now, how can I do this at the last second possible, right? How can I do the least amount of work possible? But it's always, I think we learned a lot in college, time management. I think that's a really key thing to learn. And I think homework helps you out a lot with that. And that's a really key thing to learn as an adult. But, right, so don't sleep on your education. Go out to your public library, borrow a book. You have the internet. A thing called the internet, that's also a thing that is vast and has literally everything on it. So go ahead and use that. Google something. Learn something on Wikipedia every day. I think education is the most important thing in your tool set, and if you don't get a good one, it might not necessarily be your fault, but it would be really sad if you didn't get a good one. Any last words, Yvonne?
A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Definitely. Absolutely, you know. You don't want to be stuck working at McDonald's all your life. I kid about that. McDonald's, if you're a franchise owner, if you're working hard at McDonald's, keep up the good work. But I think it's an admirable job. You learn a lot about the inner workings of McDonald's, at least.
I think it really doesn't tap into the
service.
potential of humanity.
It doesn't, but I think you should take pride in every job that you do. And but that's also a different podcast. Everything is a different podcast. Yvonne, we're going to switch over to Hungover Radio now. It's the ending segment of our podcast where we end the podcast in a song in a segment called Hungover Radio. You can send in your songs. Yes, a song that you wrote, produced, or played an instrument on. Or maybe your friend did it. Maybe you want to help your friend out. This is absolutely free advertisement for you guys. Send it in to gaminghungover@gmail.com. You can reach us there, or you can tweet at us at gaminghungover, or you can leave a comment in the comment section below on YouTube. You have all the information. Figure it out. All right, so we're going to... No one submitted a song this week. Again. Come on, guys. God. So I picked a song actually influenced by... You showed me to Richie Branson, an artist that he collaborates with that I've known about for a long time, and he's one of my favorite rappers. His name is Mega Ran. Sorry, he sort of takes on this persona where he's sort of like Mega Man, and he started out as called Random, so that's why his name's Mega Ran now. And he raps about things, the good old days when the SNES and the NES were dominant systems, and all the fun games that he played, and all that. He tells a bunch of stories through his raps. So I really like his music, and of course he samples a bunch of video game songs as well. So it sort of ties into the whole theme of Hungover Radio, in my opinion. But of course you can submit anything you want. So the song we're going to be playing today is called Dream Master. Of course, Mega Ran and K Murdoch is on the track. He does the beats, and the album is Forever Famicom. So Yvonne, thanks so much for talking to me about education. I hope we covered the topic for you guys, and we can definitely revisit this topic, especially if any important things in politics arise. I think it might be worth a revisit. But thanks so much for coming out, guys. We'll catch you next week. Peace out.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.